Yeah. Did you call the police? Did you call the police?
Yeah, I'm calling the police right now. Yes, call the circle. Yeah, I'm calling the police. So a pickup just drove. Are you okay, ma'am?
You okay, Mom?
A pickup just drove up to the side of the car. They rammed into her. They smashed the window and threw out the car. It's not funny. They threw out the car. Yeah, they left the pickup, they jumped into her car and drove out. Are you okay, ma'am? Are you okay? I'm talking to the police now, okay? Yeah, they drove off.
And
It's her car. No, I have the number. It's her car, not his car.
All right, thank you everybody for being here today, especially, the weather was really bad, so thank you for braving the snow and coming here. It's our pleasure for Regional Councillor Samira Ali and I to host this meeting in partnership with our friends at Halton Police. It's a very important conversation that needs to be had with engagement from the community because auto thefts are on the rise, crime is on the rise, especially with the recent incidents that we saw recently. It's very important that we get people into this room. And to our friends joining us live as well, thank you for watching. And if anybody has questions there, comment below and we will get to them as well. So I'll pass it over to Samira for further remarks.
thank you so much, Adil. Councillor Kalki, I think you deserve a round of applause. Thank you for joining us today. Much to what my colleague said, this is a very important topic because auto thefts are on the rise. People have questions, and I think people deserve to be able to ask these questions openly and directly to the Halton police officers, who I might add are doing a wonderful job keeping our streets safe, but then also have tips to share with you that you can apply to your daily lives to make sure that your driveways are safe, your automobiles are safe. And I would be remiss not to mention the fact that many of my wonderful colleagues are here, which includes our Milton Mayor, Mr. Krantz. Please get up and wave, Mr. Mayor, if that's okay. Our wonderful MP, Adam Vancouverton. Regional Councillor Colin Best. And my wonderful female colleagues, Councillor Tessa Dirksen and Sarah Marshall. Please get up, ladies, and wave. Wonderful, wonderful. And I hope I'm not missing out anybody, but that's all the colleagues we have. And very, very warm welcome on this snowy day to all of the residents who have joined us today. And without further ado, I would like to invite Officers Mark and Dwayne to come and educate us about auto thefts. Thank you.
On the forefront. So, it's called a work in progress, and again, we're all in this together. It will not be one single local government, regional government, provincial government, federal government. We're all in this, even globally.
Absolutely.
It's global, as you had already mentioned. It's a big nut to crack.
It's challenging for sure. Now, the one thing I would say though, and I want to thank all of you for coming. You know, we always want to have an opportunity to communicate with each of you because at the end of the day, we recognize that this new feeling and sense of well-being, and I know some of you have a lot of fears depending on what's been happening recently. We can't succeed without all of you, right? We need everyone here together, and we want to have the opportunity to speak to you from our perspective, but more importantly, we want to give you the chance to ask us some questions. because I know there's been a lot of attention to some recent events that have happened both in the media, social media, and probably amongst yourselves in your neighborhoods. And we want to give you a chance to ask us those questions. Even if they're tough questions, we want to do our best to answer them as honestly and transparently as we can, because at the end of the day, we want to be here. We want your support, and we want to do our best to ensure that we're all in this together and that we're safe together. So just to introduce myself really briefly, my name is Dwayne Perrin. My normal job for the Halton Police is I am the Detective Sergeant, which is Staff Sergeant rank, for our one district. So what that means is I'm in charge of our Criminal Investigations Bureau. So what that kind of entails and what that looks like for any of you that are not familiar with the policing world is that we have a lot of different investigative teams, as you can imagine. We have auto theft teams, we have robbery teams, we have a persons team, we have a whole bunch of different resources that are available to us to look after things that happen in our district. So all of those individuals would report directly to me, and we would be able to look after anything. So even though we're going to really specifically talk today about Milton, we also look after all of one district, which also includes Halton Hills. So we appreciate all of the support. A real special thanks to both Adil and Samira for coordinating this and really just giving us the chance to stand here in front of you and answer some questions. We're going to keep this really informal with you. We want to have a nice, intimate conversation with you and chat and talk about what's been happening in our community. As Samira and Adil both mentioned, we are here to talk about auto thefts. That was the initial purpose. However, I'd like to talk about the elephant in the room, which is our carjacking. I know that brought on a lot of media attention and it brought on a lot of concerns, not just from yourselves, but from us as well. So we'd like to discuss that as well. And we'll kind of hold that to later on in the session. But please, the one thing I encourage each of you is that when we're talking and giving you information about what's been happening, please feel free to ask any question you want, interrupt us. We want to engage and have participation because we want to get the answers that we know you guys have questions for. And then with that, I'll pass it over to Mark to introduce himself. And
grab the mic there as well?
yes. Okay.
There we go. See if that works. My name's Mark Pidbrezny. I'm the sergeant in our Community Mobilization Bureau here in Milton and Halton Hills. And so part of my responsibilities is I have a team that reports to me, and these are officers that are actually in the community. They're called Community Mobilization Officers, as well as our high school liaison officers. We also have a social worker in our office as well, dealing with various community issues, which is very helpful and kind of sets us apart within Halton Police amongst our neighboring police services. So I come at this from a community perspective angle, and Dwayne comes at it from a criminal investigations perspective, and that's kind of why I'm here as well. So I think it's a pretty good dynamic, and I know Dwayne well, and hopefully we'll be able to answer your questions. And if this is successful, this won't be the only event that we're doing. So I think we can get things started.
We are a police organization, but we are really just a spokesperson for you and trying to bring everyone together and try to kind of row in the same direction so that, at the end of the day, we all make our community safer. So I'll also start off by saying that, this is by no means meant to reduce any of the feelings that many of you have. But the one thing I do think it's still important to understand is that, in Halton, we still are the safest community in Canada in terms of crime rates and crime severity index. And some of those things are important to understand. Now, that's certainly not to take away from the fears and concerns, especially when there's recent local events that really hit home for each of you, because those matter. And those are always going to feel more prevalent and more, I guess, dangerous, really, because it's making you feel uneasy with your families. But I think it's still important to understand that we still are the safest community in Canada. And that's not us saying that. That's actually our statistics saying that in terms of crime rates and those types of things that I think are important. Of course, we are completely committed to doing whatever we possibly can to make our community safer, which is why we're here. This is our first real kickoff meeting, but we hope that this is something that we can do regularly and bring everyone together, and hopefully this audience will grow as the months continue, and because we want to have participation from each of you, because it's important, it really is. So I want to start off by talking about auto thefts first. But again, please feel free to interrupt us at any time. We'll gladly take questions, and we'll kind of start off with that, and then we'll focus on some of the elephant in the room, some of the items that we talked about earlier. So just for awareness, I'm sure this is going to come of no surprise to all of you, but car thefts are on the rise. We all know that. I bet you there's not a person in here that doesn't know somebody that's had their car stolen, probably in the last couple of years. So I'd like to go over just a few statistics with you just to kind of paint a picture in terms of how many we're actually seeing, because you may have heard it from your neighbors and your friends, but I think it's important to understand where we are in our community. So specifically in Milton, I can tell you that back in 2019, in Milton only, we had a total of 79 car thefts, which is obviously still too high, but a fairly low number. Now, moving from 2019 to 2020, we jumped up from 79 to 97, which was a 22% increase. So things were starting to pick up, and we started to see that early on. And then when we jumped to 2021, we had a really big increase. We went from 97 to 162 car thefts just in Milton, which represents a 67% increase. So something changed there, and it's important for us to understand the root cause. What is that change? What has happened? Is there something from a manufacturing perspective? Is there something from a police perspective? In January, in our district, we spearheaded an initiative to develop a regional auto theft task force. So this is something we started in January. It's only been about a month since they've really got off the ground and started working. But we've had some really good success already. Because as you can appreciate, having a team in Milton to go out and focus efforts on crime prevention as well as the investigative piece, we're duplicating our efforts. Sometimes, in full transparency to you, sometimes we would knock on doors to get camera surveillance and ask for feedback from the community. And we would have officers from Oakville doing the same thing because the same people hit them as well. So it just makes sense for us to have one team that looks after things regionally. Now, I'm going to be very transparent with you. Sometimes task forces aren't always looked upon greatly, because does that mean that our team is now not going to focus on Milton? And that is not the case. I want to reassure you that despite us having a regional task force, we still have a full team in Milton that is still spearheading our main efforts, even though we know the same individuals are targeting cars throughout our entire region. We still have a team that is here working on our specific efforts. So that way, if we're looking at some of the more sophisticated groups and we're trying to move up the chain in terms of the people that are coordinating all of these thefts, we still have a local effort, because that's important. We want all of you to know that doesn't change despite us having a task force. So our task force is working around the clock. They are working mostly night shifts, to be honest with you, because you can all appreciate that is when most of our actual thefts are occurring. In the last month, we've had two really significant investigations that concluded that you might have seen us push out some media releases for. One that originated out of Burlington, and we actually did some search warrants at a warehouse in Burlington, where we know that there was a lot of stolen cars that were being used there and they were being shipped overseas. Because the one important piece to remember is the whole business of car thefts has changed. 10 years ago, I'm in my 21st year of policing now, and I know when I first started in my career, it was typically people coming out to steal cars for a joyride, and they were having fun with their friends, and it wasn't really organized. But that's not the case anymore. This new business of car theft is absolutely sophisticated. It is completely feeding finances and funds into organized crime, and that is some of the real significant concerns we have, because not only are they taking each of our cars, but that money that is being made through the sale of those stolen cars is being used to feed organized crime, and that's concerning to us, because of course this is just the tip of the iceberg, and why it's so important for us to be here today and get a handle on this. We can do a lot of investigative efforts to bring some of these people before our courts and to bring them to justice. But where we're really going to get the most bang for our buck, to be honest with you, is in prevention. We have to do that together. And that is where we absolutely need each of you to collectively help us in that regard, because obviously these are your cars at your residences, and we are doing a lot of things, which I'll talk about in a second, but we need help. We certainly need help in terms of trying to reduce, I guess, the opportunity for these thieves to target our area and Milton. So part of our communication strategy is to try to get the word out that these things are happening every day. In fact, if you look at 2022, we had 233 car thefts just in Milton. And just for reference, we had 145 more in Halton Hills. So our district alone was 378, which equals and averages one car theft a day. So these are happening every single day. But I find it, sometimes I've had a lot of discussions with our community members, and it's not as well known as I would think it was, because of course I see this every day and I'm reading every report that comes through, And I recognize how prevalent this is, but a lot of our community members still don't realize that we have a significant problem. And that partly is on us because we need to continue doing a better job communicating and doing that more creatively. You know, if we're pushing out media releases to each of you, we're trying to leverage social media. Last year, we issued 12 different releases in which we talked about car thefts and we talked about prevention pieces. But I'm not naive to think that not everyone follows our social media channels and our media releases, and we understand that. So we need to find creative ways, which is kind of the driving force as to why we're here today. Because if we can get in front of a large group of people, you know, each of you have family and friends that live in this town, in this district, and you can help us spread that word. Because the more people understand that we do have a problem here, then of course that's going to help us lend to reducing some of these issues. Something creative we did last year and actually the year before as well, which I'll talk about, and some of you may have received these, but if not, this may come as a surprise to you. We took a bit of a different approach because early in 2021, we recognized that the main vehicles that were being targeted were Lexuses. That was the #1 car that was being targeted. Now, we have seen that change over the last 2 years, and I'll talk about that in a little bit in terms of what vehicles are targeting and why they're targeting those vehicles. But originally, it was mostly just Lexuses. If you owned a Lexus, I hate to say this, but there was a good chance your car was going to get stolen here. So because of that, what we did is we actually identified every vehicle owner in our district that owned that type of vehicle. And we actually took the approach of sending out personalized letters because we really capitalize on that teamwork atmosphere. But just as important as that, similar to what I mentioned earlier, where our thieves are coming into Milton and then they're going to Oakville, they're also going to Peel on the same days. They're also going to Mississauga and Brampton and some of the nearby jurisdictions, and they're targeting those areas on the exact days that they're targeting us. So we participated in 3 different joint force operations that we called Project High Five, Project Touchdown, and Project Raptor. They had extraordinary success in terms of criminal charges laid. Each of them, we saw hundreds and hundreds of criminal charges laid. We also recovered a significant amount of stolen vehicles. However, our numbers didn't drastically change. We still are seeing thefts happen. So again, it reminds us that there are a lot of sophisticated and organized groups that are out there doing these types of things. It's not just one group, because if it was, of course, that would be pretty easy for us to tackle. But because there is so much money to be made from car theft, unfortunately, and because it's become so easy, and I'll talk about the methods in just a second, you know, we're seeing groups pop up all the time that are continuing to do this, right? So again, you're one piece of the puzzle for us. You're an important stakeholder for us to try to contribute. And we've got a few others, which I'm going to talk about in a second. Individuals that are carrying firearms and are dangerous to us, as we just saw this week here in Milton. So doing our best to connect with our crime attorneys and educate them. And we've actually done some training with them so that they understand that this is a global problem. And similar to what we're doing here today, you know, they only see the cases, as you can appreciate, they only see the cases that we bring before them when arrests are made. But what that means is that we're missing a really big opportunity to educate them about all of the ones that we didn't have an arrest for. Because if they don't understand how significant this problem is, then of course it's difficult to tackle it from a court perspective and a sentencing perspective when these individuals are brought before our systems. So just before I pass it over to Mark, I just want to talk about a little bit about how these thefts are actually occurring, because I think this is one of the important pieces. Because I'm sure there's many of you in the room that wonder why it's so easy to do this and why is it tough for us to actually catch these individuals doing this. So you may ask yourself, why are they targeting Lexuses? Of course, it's a nice vehicle and it's unfortunately worth a lot of money, especially when these vehicles are primarily being sent overseas, because we're seeing that where they're showing up in Europe and they're showing up in Africa. That is where I would say 90% of our stolen vehicles are actually going. They are ending up on shipping containers and they're being sent overseas. So that's challenging because that brings on a whole new level of organization that we have never seen before. And unfortunately, when these vehicles are being stolen, they're typically being loaded onto a shipping container within 1 day. So it doesn't give us a great opportunity to go out and locate these vehicles and try to recover them prior to that happening. So the reason why Lexuses were typically being targeted outside of the financial perspective is because they came out with push start ignitions. And you all saw that, and I'm sure some of you have vehicles that have push starts. And the reason I bring that forward to you is that over 95% of our vehicles that are being stolen all have push start. That is the absolute common trait that is amongst all vehicle thefts that we are seeing. And I'll talk about why that's important and why that's going to lead to some of our prevention pieces. So I'm sure some of you have had this happen to you before, where you've had a set of keys and you potentially lost your keys and you had to go to the mechanic and have them reprogram a new key for you. And I bet some of you could probably tell me if I asked how long that took. It probably didn't take long, a couple minutes for a mechanic to use a computer, buy a blank key, and reprogram a brand new key for you. That is exactly what our car thieves are doing. That is exactly how these thefts are happening. So what a mechanic would do is they would take a small computer system that you can actually buy, unfortunately.
A little more difficult for these car thefts and for these criminal organizations to target your specific vehicle. So as Dwayne mentioned previously, one of the first things that you can do, of course, is park your vehicle in a locked or secured garage. Not everybody has that option though. And as you mentioned earlier, if you have multiple vehicles, if you don't even have a garage, that's not even an option. And sorry, just to backtrack one point here is, not everything is good. This is not a foolproof plan. It's not going to be 100%. However, if somebody comes to your vehicle and just they take a second look and they see that you've done some of these steps, it might just prevent you from being the next victim. So I'll just mention that. So parking your vehicle in the garage is a big one. As a kid growing up, I never understood why my dad put one of these clubs on the car. I don't know if you guys have seen them before. It's just this very rudimentary idea of this metal object that goes across your steering wheel. And that actually, believe it or not, is one of the things that actually works very well. And we've seen examples of videos that actually show a criminal coming up to a vehicle, looking inside or opening the door and seeing that the club is on the car, and then they actually leave. And then they go to the next one. So believe it or not, we're talking about a $50, under $100 option.
It pops up in the system itself, and so there's no flaw and loophole.
Definitely.
Why this is happening? Because there are things going on.
Yes.
And I have the opportunity to come and do that.
Yes.
Because there's a modus operandi in between everything.
Absolutely.
So just if I look at it at a glance,
Yes.
what's happening? It's a car stole. Somebody came, stole the car. Here we're talking about certain brands.
Correct.
We're talking about Lexus and other cars.
Absolutely.
So I think there's a bigger picture to that.
Definitely.
And unless and until we get engaged ourselves and control it from that point,
Correct.
these things will keep happening.
Definitely. And in fact, so we do have a lot of coordination. Thank you. We do have a lot of coordination with other countries. We actually, without getting too in-depth on an investigation we're currently working on, we have about 20 vehicles, really expensive cars that we actually just recovered from Morocco that we've been working with them because we've started to notice that some of our vehicles are popping up there. And the interesting piece to this is that, the individuals that are taking these cars overseas, they're not hiding it. They're actually advertising them for sale online in those countries with our license plates still attached to them, with Ontario license plates. So as we start to narrow down where those are going, we do try our best to coordinate with those countries, which is why we were able to grab those 20 cars, and they're actually on their way back as we speak right now. So, but as you can imagine, there are so many countries, and trying to get everyone on board, it's definitely a logistical challenge.
We have Ron over there for the
Yes.
next.
I want to thank you for your efforts. You are working very hard in different good and bad conditions. And I have an impression that the police number is underestimated or need more force. I have two questions. The first one is if we put the car inside the garage, will eliminate or reduce or the
Yes.
know how to do it. Second thing, in Metro Plaza incident, we had the impression that the police was there but cannot interfere. Some people blame the police why don't you interfere, but I do think you have a priority, you have a policy how to deal with such situations, and people seem that it is no, the police didn't do good.
Sure.
So we would like to know what are these priorities in order to understand and educate them.
Absolutely. So I'll
because we also have the crime prevention.
Yeah, so I'll
section
talk
as
about
well.
it in two pieces. I'll let Mark talk about the prevention piece, because you're right. Parking the car in the garage is actually our first point, because if we do that, it's going to drastically reduce. And I'll touch briefly on the Metro incident, but I would love to talk about that more at length, because I know that's such an important piece. but I'll give you an answer for now, but we'll come back to that later. So I'd like to expand on that a little bit later, if that's okay.
And more than anything, more than you getting the opportunity to ask these questions, I know through these questions, you will also experience a lot of catharsis. You'll be able to vent. You'll be able to share your fears. And I feel that that is also very important. It's the human capital of governance, to be able to understand that the community is hurting and what we can do to provide them an opportunity to kind of heal themselves. So this event, this public meeting, was an opportunity for you to come here and heal a little bit. I know our community is hurting and we're scared, but you heard it from the officers. We are the safest community. You heard it from a wonderful mayor. You heard it from our MP and my other colleagues here. We are here in this together. We are here to help you. We're here to tell you that we continue to be the safest community, and we're all working together to make sure it stays that way, and we're available to answer any questions, concerns you have. So I just wanted to add that little speech in there for all of you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I'm going to turn the table now.
Oh, yeah. Go for it.
So I want to ask you a question. Is there
Yeah.
something as police that we can do better from a communication perspective, or anything that comes to mind that you would like to see?
अस्सलामुअलैकुम। मेरा नाम अब्दुल कय्यूम मुफ्ती है और आज आपके साथ मैं शेयर करूंगा जो हालात हाजरा में एक बड़ी एक तकलीफदेह चीज़ है, और वो है आपके होम ब्रेक-इन्स और कार थेफ्ट। आजकल स्टैट्स को देखिए तो हर कोई ऐसा शख्स आप जिससे बात करते हैं, या तो वो खुद इससे गुजरा हुआ है कि उनकी अपनी गाड़ी चोरी हुई है, या वो किसी ऐसे शख्स को जानता है जिसकी जो है ना वो गाड़ी जो है घर से या बाहर से कहीं से ना कहीं चोरी हुई है। अब आपको मैं क्या बताऊं कि मैं खुद मैं इस हालत से गुजरा हूं कि रिसेंटली पिछले जनवरी में शुरू में मेरे घर पे जो है वो आए कुछ लोग, और वो घर से अंदर आके बैक डोर से और चाबियाँ मेरी जो गाड़ियों की थी वो उठा के, और एक नहीं बल्कि 2 गाड़ियाँ जो मेरे ड्राइवे पे खड़ी थी वो एक साथ ही अपने वो लेके चले गए। तो इतना आप ये अंदाज़ा कीजिए कि ये लोग यानी वो बोल्ड हो गए हैं कि वो घर में रात को, जब उनको मालूम भी था कि घर पे लोग मौजूद हैं, उसके बावजूद वो अंदर आने की उनकी हिम्मत हुई और बड़े आराम से अपना काम वो करके चलते बने। अब स्टैट्स को आप देखते हैं तो बड़े एस्टॉनिशिंग स्टैट्स हैं। अभी उसकी बात है कि टोरंटो में 5000 गाड़ियाँ जो हैं वो जो है गायब हुई हैं। पील के अंदर 4500, इसी तरह से आपके हॉल्टन के अंदर 2200 गाड़ियाँ जो है वो चली गई हैं। तो ये एक एपिडेमिक की सूरत इख्तियार कर गया है, और मैं समझता हूँ कि इसका सलूशन एक हमें इंडिविजुअली भी एहतियात करने की ज़रूरत है। और मैंने अपनी जो मेरे साथ जो वाक़या हुआ उसकी मैंने वीडियो अपलोड की हुई है कि यूट्यूब के ऊपर मेरे चैनल पे आप गूगल कीजिएगा AQ मुफ्ती को तो आपको मिल जाएगा, और उसी के डिस्क्रिप्शन को आप क्लिक करेंगे तो उसमें मैंने 10 तजावीज़ जो है वो मैंने दी हैं जो अपने घर को और अपनी व्हीकल को सिक्योर करने के लिए। उनमें सीधा जो सबसे अहम है वो ये है कि पहली बात तो है कि अपनी गाड़ी को डेफिनेटली लॉक करके रखें, और उसके साथ जो अहम चीज़ है वो ये कि एक विजुअल डिटरेंट, वो जो है आप एक व्हील का लॉक जो आपने देखा एक बार सी बनी होती है, आमतौर पर रेड कलर में या येलो कलर में, प्रोमिनेंट कलर में होती है, तो वो आप जब भी वो बाहर गाड़ी खड़ी करें तो उसको ज़रूर लगाएं। उससे ये होता है कि जो थीफ आते हैं इनका टाइम कम होता है, तो जो वो ये देखते हैं कि ऐसी फिजिकल चीज़ एक और लॉक भी लगा हुआ है तो वो उनको टाइम वेस्टिंग लगता है, वो कहते चले किसी और की तरफ जाते हैं। तो एक तो ये है। फिर डेफिनेटली घरों में अपने आप को ये रखें कि जो चाबियाँ जो हैं वो आजकल